GTA Online's most recent DLC came out in June called San Andreas Mercenaries. And since everything from this DLC has finally been released, I wanted to take a look back at this DLC and see just how good it was. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Alright, so this DLC came out on June 13th of 2023, and there was a bunch of different things that were released with this DLC, but the main core of this DLC was pretty much centered around a bunch of different aircraft and a bunch of different missions that were based upon flying around and stopping Merryweather. But I'm gonna go through everything that was released with this DLC in this video and kind of just give my thoughts and opinions about it and really see how this DLC compares to the most recent DLCs that we've gotten. So let's head over to the first thing with this DLC. All right, so a lot of this DLC was really centered around the Avenger, which is right behind me. But weirdly enough, the Avenger has been out since the Doomsday Heist has been released. So with this DLC, we really didn't get like a vehicle or a property where you can start up all these missions or whatever. We just got an addition to the Avenger to start up these missions. So yeah, let's go inside the Avenger and kind of take a look at these missions that I'm talking about. All right, so I'm inside my Avenger right now, and pretty much the new things with this DLC is all centered around right here. This little screen right here called the Operations Terminal. Now, the Operations Terminal is right here off the Warstock Cash and Carry, and the Operations Terminal itself is going to cost $1,450,000. So if you already had the Avenger, then that wasn't a horrible price point, but there's a problem with that because if you're a lower level and you already don't have an Avenger, you need to purchase the Avenger to then purchase the Operations Terminal, so then you can do these new missions. And the Avenger costs $3,450,000 just stock. So in total, if you did not already have the Avenger, you needed to spend $4,900,000 just to access these new missions, which that's incredibly steep, to be honest. But anyways, yeah, so you'd go over here, and now you can access this screen where you can select two different icons. You can select the Project Overthrow missions or LS Operation missions. We'll first go over Project Overthrow missions. Now there's 6 of these different missions, and pretty much our goal here is to help Charlie Reed stop Merryweather, and that's pretty much all I'm going to go into it. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I'm going to be honest, the story really was kind of like lacking. Like, we've defeated Merryweather so many times, or at least battled Merryweather so many times, but I don't know, like when the Contract DLC came out late 2021, and pretty much the main bad guy of the Contract missions to help Dr. Dre, the bad guy was some guy named Johnny Guns who we didn't know anything about previously. I mean, it's a pretty fun storyline. I mean, this storyline here, it was pretty lacking. You know, I wasn't emotionally invested in killing Merryweather or whatever, but anyways, who cares about that? I mean, most people can probably forgive, you know, a lacking storyline if it's a good payout, and well, the payout wasn't great either. I mean, these missions pretty much paid out like contact missions, so not much, probably just under $20,000 per mission. And these missions were like a cakewalk either. Some of these missions were kind of difficult. So I don't know, let's just say after like, I don't know, between like an hour and 30 or 2 hours, you're getting, I don't know, anywhere between like $100,000 to $125,000. You know, not great money, not a good investment of my time, but you do get a first time bonus, but the first time bonus is very lacking compared to, I don't know, like the first dose missions, the last dose missions, the casino missions. I don't know, these missions were pretty lacking. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I definitely haven't touched it too much since it came out. And it kind of sucks because this DLC is pretty much centered around these missions, in my opinion. These missions in the LSA operations missions, which I'll talk about a little bit. But yeah, these missions weren't great. They just weren't. All right, so we talked about the Project Overthrow missions. Let's now talk about the LSA operation missions, which are right here. And these are 3 sets of missions right here: direct action, surgical strike, and whistleblower. And these missions really acted a lot like security contracts from your agency, which also came from the Contract DLC. And these are missions that you can do in free mode, and there's different levels to how much money you're going to get from these missions, the lowest level being professional and the highest level being specialist. There's kind of one new kind of cool feature with these missions where there's a operation bonus in the middle of these missions where if you complete the operation bonus, you're gonna get an extra $15,000, which I mean, that's pretty cool, I guess. But aside from that, these missions are very, very repetitive in my opinion. Like, I think they're cool to do once or whatever, but if you try to do it over and over and over, it gets very, very boring and very, very repetitive after a while. In my opinion, you definitely don't want to try to grind this out to try to make money. When this DLC came out, I tried to make a video of me trying to make the money back from purchasing the operation terminal by only playing the LSA operations missions, and I got to like $700,000 made and I rage quit. I was so bored out of my mind and so miserable after doing these missions. And these missions aren't a cakewalk either. Like, these missions will take roughly like 10 minutes a piece. If you're really, really efficient, you can maybe do it in 8 minutes. But yeah, some of these missions are pretty difficult. I think Surgical Strike, I don't mind at all. I think that one, for the most part, goes pretty smoothly for me. But Direct Action and Whistleblower, oh my gosh, they can be so frustrating to play. Now, for these missions, I'd say only do them if they're boosted money. And when I say do them, I mean do not just spend your entire day doing it. I'd say maybe, I don't know, in between you doing something, or if you're bored and it's boosted money, you can do them. But oh my gosh, it gets so boring if you just play them over and over and over again. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the operations terminal. And well, for $1,450,000, I mean, these two sets of different types of missions aren't great, and I don't think it's worth it even for the $1,450,000. Just imagine if you didn't have an Avenger before this DLC and you have to buy the Avenger and then the operations terminal just to do these missions. Oh my gosh, $4,900,000 for this? No, it's like laughably not worth it in my opinion. It's not great. All right, so now that I just pretty much cooked the operations terminal, let's just go to the next thing that came out with this DLC. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about that came out with this DLC, I'm only going to talk about for a little bit, and that is pretty much an overhaul to how the hangar works and you collecting product for it. In the past, when you tried to collect product, you had these sourcing missions that were kind of long that mainly involved an aircraft. But with this update, Rockstar added in land source missions and land sell missions, and these are so much better. This is a good update for the hangar. The land sourcing missions are a lot more efficient as far as accumulating product than the air sourcing missions, and the land selling missions are a lot quicker than the air selling missions. So that update was pretty good for the hangar. And not only that, we got a new fella over here that can actually source cargo for us, and his name is Rooster McCraw. You can speak to Rooster and pay him $25,000 to source some air freight cargo, and he'll go out and bring back a random product of air freight cargo. But really, it's not as worth it to use Rooster because he's going to get random products, and if you sell one particular product to a certain amount, you'll get a bonus. But with Rooster collecting many different types of products, you're not going to be able to get a certain bonus for whatever you do sell. But yeah, if you want this business to be a little bit more passive, then yeah, you can definitely use Rooster and collect products passively. All right, so we're talking about everything new that was added to the hangar. So now let's jump into the next thing. Now, the next thing, there's pretty much two random events that were added that I'm going to quickly go over. And the first random event that was added is called Finders Keepers, and it's essentially where you randomly find a gang vehicle which is carrying some precious cargo, and you pretty much steal their vehicle and the cargo to replenish one of your businesses, like one of your MC businesses. So that's pretty cool if you stumble upon that. And the next random event added or brought back into the game was the armor truck robberies. Now, the armor truck robberies was in the game from the game's launch of 2013 until 2015 when it was removed just because of how buggy it was. But in one of the event weeks with this DLC, they added armor truck robberies back into the game. And essentially, if you rob one of the armor trucks, you get $25,000. So if you stumble upon it, it's pretty worth it. But I mean, you have to stumble upon it. So kind of annoying, but whatever. All right, so we're going to get into the next things that were added with this DLC. And the first thing was Instead of the RC Bandito time trials being rotated every week, they're now rotated every day, but it's a pay decrease of $50,000 for completing it. But still, in my opinion, it's not bad at all. Like, you get $50,000 for completing the RC Bandito time trial. If you do it every day of the week, which is 7 days, you make $350,000. That's not bad at all. So yeah, that's kind of cool. And then they also added in another time trial, which is right behind me, and that is the Junk Energy time trial. So essentially, this time trial is pretty much you are on a bike, but this bike is an electric bike. You can actually boost with this electric bike. But anyways, you have to do this time trial, and very similarly to the update that they made with the RC Bandito time trial, is that this time trial is updated every day also. And it's the same price pretty much for completing this time trial as it is for completing the RC Bandito time trial. So if you do this every day of the week, you can make $350,000, which honestly, that's not bad at all. And this time trial doesn't take too long. This time trial is a lot easier to do, in my opinion, than the RC Bandito time trial. So yeah, this is a pretty good update to the game. Something you can do pretty quickly. If you just load into the game, you can just jump on, do the Junk Energy time trial. I'd recommend do this over the RC Bandito time trial. But now let's jump into the next new thing that was added to this DLC. All right, the next thing that was new with this DLC that came out a little bit later on was the adversary mode called Assault on Cayo Perico. And this adversary mode, in my opinion, is actually really fun. So essentially, there's a team of attackers and a team of defenders, and pretty much the team of attackers are trying to attack the island of Cayo Perico and pretty much just take it over. And you have to take it over within a certain amount of time, and the defending team, well, has to defend the island of Cayo Perico. But my only problem with this adversary mode is that this adversary mode is only going to be fun when it probably is going to be boosted money. I'm only saying that because I tried to join this sometime after the first week it was out and when it wasn't boosted money, and just no one joined. And when you actually did get a group of people to actually play Assault on Cayo Perico, it's only the bare minimum, and really it's just not fun at that point. And not to mention that when it's not boosted money, the pay is really not worth it. So yeah, this is probably another thing where I'd only touch if it's boosted money. If it's not boosted money, then do something else for the day. There's plenty to do in this game. Don't mess around with Assault on Cayo Perico, unless if you have like a big friend group that is willing to play this, or if it's boosted money. All right, so now we need to talk about the vehicles that were added in this DLC. But first, I think we need to get the big elephant out of the room. And that is all the vehicles that they delisted from this DLC. They literally took a ton of vehicles out of the game. And to be exact, Rockstar removed 186 vehicles from GTA Online that were on the normal websites. But aside from the 186 vehicles that were removed from the game, we need to talk about the vehicles that were added into the game. So there was 3 different aircrafts that were added into the game. The first one being the Streamer 216 right here. Nothing really crazy with this aircraft. The main thing with this aircraft is that it does have carpet bombs, which is pretty fun to use, but not really a game changer. But this next aircraft is very popular now in GTA Online. Probably the best thing that was added into this DLC, and that was the F-160 Raiju. Now, along with them adding this jet into the game, they nerfed the P-99 laser and the Hydra, which before the Raiju came out were the best jets in the game. They nerfed those 2 jets and made their cannons not as effective. So along with that, and plus just how good the Raiju is by far the best jet in the game now. And the cool thing about this jet is you can go off the radar too. You can go into stealth mode and you can fly around undetected on the radar. So yeah, if you're in a public session now, you'll probably see this jet flying around, to be honest. It's very popular. Like, I think it's pretty tough actually to try to join a public session without seeing this Raiju, but it's a very good jet. It costs over $5 million, but honestly, that's a pretty fair price tag just for how good this jet is. And the final thing was the weaponized Kanata, and to be honest, I didn't pick this helicopter up. I don't have much of an opinion on it. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know too much about it. But those were the 3 new aircraft that were added into the game. But now we need to get into the vehicles that were added into the game, which this first one right here is the Rapid Click Wagon. It's kind of a cool looking car, but it's only here for the looks. It doesn't provide much value, and it costs over $1 million. Awesome. Another vehicle that came out was the Walton L5. Once again, a pretty useless truck in my opinion, and it costs over $1,600,000. Yeah, awesome. That's great. Another vehicle that came out was the Vapid Ratel. This is actually a pretty cool off-roading vehicle in my opinion, but I mean, geez, the prices are really steep with these vehicles, as you can tell, with this one being $1.8 million. Oh my gosh. And then you have the Maibatsu Monstrosity right here, which you could actually make this vehicle into a Monitech vehicle or a HAL Special Works vehicle. So this vehicle is actually pretty versatile. So honestly, in my opinion, with the price tag right around $1.5 million, it's not a bad price point for this vehicle. And this was the last normal car that came out with this DLC on day one, and that was the Italy GTO Stinger TT. And I remember when this vehicle came out and just thinking that the name was obnoxiously long. And why is the name so long? Like, can we be a little bit more creative with the name? Like, come on. But anyways, just like the Monstrosity, you can turn this vehicle into either a Monitech or an HSW vehicle, and well, obviously this vehicle is going to be a little bit better than the Monstrosity in its actual performance. So I think with like a $2.38 million price tag, not horrible. And then the first event week came out and gave us the Buffalo EVX, and this vehicle is actually an electric vehicle, which is kind of interesting. But this vehicle is another vehicle that can also get a Monitech and HSW upgrade. So the $2.14 million price tag on it, I'm cool with the price tag being as high for these types of vehicles, just because you can actually make money with it, or you can put a Monitech on it so people can't lock on to you. So these vehicles, in my opinion, are pretty worth it as far as their price tag to like their actual benefits in the game. And then came the Pinot La Carrou, which currently right now it's discounted, but its normal price is $1,990,000. And once again, this is another vehicle and the last vehicle in this DLC that you could make in a Monitech vehicle and an HSW vehicle. So yeah, those last four vehicles I actually think are pretty worth it into the game. And then Rockstar added in the Bravado Hot Ring Hellfire, which is coming in at $1,810,000. As you can tell, it's pretty much like a race car, but I mean, it's not a crazy good vehicle in my opinion, so I don't really think it's that worth it. And then we had the Albany Brigham as our final new DLC vehicle that came out, and it's costing us $1,499,000. Now the actual vehicle and how it performs is, well, not good, but this vehicle is actually pretty cool because it's based upon the Ghostbusters movies, and it's just a very different looking vehicle in my opinion. Like, there's no vehicle that looks like this either. Like, put all the Ghostbusters stuff like aside, like, I mean, this vehicle just looks weird, but it's kind of like a, okay, let me get this just because of how weird it looks kind of vehicle. So yeah, I guess with like the $1.5 million price tag on it, I mean, like, sure, I'd rather get this vehicle than most of the other vehicles in this DLC. Oh yeah, and that vehicle also reminded me of the Halloween events that came out with this DLC, and they added back in the pumpkin collectibles. They've done that in the past, but they also added in ghosts that were around the map, and this hadn't been added into the game, and that was actually pretty cool. You can go around photographing ghosts, get some money. And then something a little disappointing for me was them not adding in peyote plants. Like, I was so excited to make a video about peyote plants being back into the game, but it wasn't added in for the Halloween event, which was kind of disappointing in my opinion. But they added it in for Easter, which I thought was a little interesting. So it might be an Easter thing from here on out, but I don't know. Yeah, I just looked it up. The peyote plants were active every Halloween from 2019 until 2022, pretty much for the event week that landed exactly on Halloween. And there was like a few additional weeks of peyote plants that were added in, like in between. But this was the first Halloween since 2019 that didn't have peyote plants, which that is a little disappointing in my opinion. All right, so since I just went over everything that was pretty much added into this DLC, I want to go over the last 5 DLCs that were added into the game and kind of rank the last 5 DLCs just to really get a full understanding, in my opinion, of where this DLC ranks amongst the most recent DLCs. So these DLCs include the Los Santos Tuners DLC, which came out the middle of 2021, the Contract DLC DLC, which came out late 2021, the Criminal Enterprise DLC, which came out in the middle of 2022, and Los Santos Drug Wars DLC, which came out late 2022, and the San Andreas Mercenaries DLC, which came out in the middle of 2023. And at the number 5 spot, I'm actually not going to put the San Andreas Mercenaries DLC at number 5. Like, I talked a lot of crap about the San Andreas Mercenaries DLC, in my opinion, but I don't even think it's the worst out of these 5. So within the last 5 DLCs, the worst DLC, in my opinion, is going to be the Criminal Enterprise DLC. And the Criminal Enterprise DLC essentially was the game tweaking a bunch of different things that kind of needed to be tweaked into the game. Wasn't a whole lot of just raw new content. And if there was like raw new content, it's pretty miscellaneous. It didn't really have like that much of a purpose. We had like a set of new missions, the ULP missions, and that didn't even give a first time bonus either. It was just you do the missions and voila, you're done. But the story for that was a lot better than this one though. But yeah, that Criminal Enterprise DLC just felt all over the place. There wasn't really like a true theme with the DLC, so that's kind of why I'm putting it at the number 5 spot. And at the number 4 spot, I am putting the San Andreas Mercenaries DLC. The DLC which pretty much this video is being built around. And at the number 3 spot, I'm going to put the LS Drug Wars DLC. This isn't going to give us a ton of money, but it gave us the Acid Lab. The first dose and last dose missions are very, very good to start out the game with, but aside from that, they aren't really worth it. The Acid Lab is pretty worth it. At the number 2 spot, I'm probably going to put the LS Tuners DLC. And with this DLC, it gave us the auto shop, so we can do auto shop contracts along with the addition of the LS Car Meet. And at the number 1 spot within the last 5 DLCs is going to be the contract. It did such a great job with the contract, and honestly, the San Andreas Mercenaries DLC, in my opinion, doesn't really compare that well to the contract or the LS Tuners DLC, both of the DLCs that came out in 2021. But with all that being said, hopefully the next DLC that will come out, hopefully in December, will be a lot better than the San Andreas Mercenaries DLC. Make sure you check out this video right here if you want to see how to make your first $1 million as a level 1 in GTA Online.